Let me paint you a picture. It's 7:43 in the morning. Your alarm went off 20 minutes ago, and you're lying there in bed trying to decide whether to hit snooze one more time. That decision right there, that moment of weighing 5 more minutes of sleep against being late to work, that is economics. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You're thinking, come on, economics is about GDP, interest rates, and stuff that puts me to sleep faster than that snooze button. And look, I get it. I completely understand why most people tune out the moment someone mentions the word economics. But here's the truth. You have been making economic decisions since the moment you were old enough to choose between a candy bar and a pack of gum at the checkout line. Every single day of your life, you are running complex economic calculations in your head. You just haven't been calling them that. Shocking stat. According to research from Princeton University, the average adult makes roughly 35,000 decisions per day, and the overwhelming majority of those decisions involve some form of economic trade-off. 35,000 decisions. That's one decision every 2 seconds if you're awake for 16 hours. Think about that for a second. So today, we are going to do something that most economics textbooks never do. We're going to take this massive, intimidating subject, the one that supposedly requires a PhD to understand, and we're going to show you that you already understand it better than you think. Because here's what I want you to walk away with today. Economics is not just numbers on a spreadsheet. It is the story of human choice, and you, my friend, are the main character. So let's start with the boring textbook definition, just so we can throw it out the window. Most textbooks will tell you that economics is the study of how individuals and societies allocate scarce resources. Technically accurate, completely unhelpful. Here's the real definition. Economics is the study of how people deal with trade-offs. That's it. Every time you can't have everything you want, which is basically every moment of every day, you are engaging with economics. Let me give you a concrete example. Let's say you have $500 in your bank account right now. You could spend it on a new pair of sneakers, you could put it toward that car repair you've been avoiding, you could invest it in the stock market, you could save it for a rainy day, you could take your family out for a really nice dinner. You literally cannot do all five. The moment you choose one, you give up the others. That's economics. Economists call this opportunity cost, and it is arguably the single most important concept in all of finance. Now, here's where it gets interesting. That $500 decision I just described, you're making versions of that decision every single day. Should I make coffee at home or buy a $6 latte at Starbucks? Should I take the highway and pay the $4 toll or take the back roads and spend an extra 15 minutes? Should I cook dinner or order delivery? Each one of those is an economic decision. Each one involves a trade-off between money, time, convenience, and preference. See, every economic system in the world, from the simplest village economy to the most complex global marketplace, is essentially trying to answer three fundamental questions. Question number one, what should we produce? Should we grow wheat or corn? Should we build more hospitals or more highways? Should your company make software or hardware? Question number two, how should we produce it? Should we use machines or human labor? Should we centralize production or distribute it? Should we go organic or conventional? Question number three, who gets the stuff we produce? Should it go to the highest bidder? Should it be distributed equally? Should it go to whoever needs it most? Now, here's the fascinating part. You are answering all three of these questions in your own life right now. What career do you pursue? How do you spend your time at work? How do you divide your paycheck between rent, food, savings, and entertainment? You are running your own personal economy every single day. Relatable moment. Think about the last time you went grocery shopping. You walked through those aisles making hundreds of microeconomic decisions. Name brand versus store brand. Healthy versus convenient. Buy now versus wait for a sale. That is economics in its purest, most human form. Here's a myth I want to bust right now because it holds so many people back from understanding their own financial lives. The myth is this: Economics is complicated because the world is complicated, and therefore you need experts to navigate it for you. Now, I'm not saying experts aren't valuable, they absolutely are, but the core principles of economics, the stuff that actually governs your daily financial decisions, are not complicated. They're actually deeply intuitive because they're based on human nature, and you are human. You already have the raw material, we just need to sharpen the tools. Let's talk about something that affects every single person watching this right now, your paycheck. Now, I know supply and demand sounds like something from a boring lecture, but stay with me because understanding this could literally change how you negotiate your next raise. Here's the concept. When something is scarce and many people want it, its price goes up. When something is abundant and few people want it, its price goes down. That's supply and demand in one sentence. Now, apply that to yourself. Your skills, your time, your labor, these are all things that have a supply and demand curve. If you have skills that not many people have but a lot of employers need, you command a higher salary. If you have skills that pretty much anyone can do, your salary stays lower because you're competing with a much larger pool of people. Real math example. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that the median annual salary for a software developer in the U.S. is approximately $124,200. The median for a retail cashier is approximately $30,700. That's not a judgment about which job is more worthy. It is purely a reflection of supply and demand dynamics in the labor market. So here's the actionable insight. Every time you learn a new skill, you are shifting your personal supply and demand curve. You are making yourself more scarce in a specific area of the market. That is economics working directly in your favor. All right, now let's talk about something that most people know exists, but very few people truly understand at a gut level: inflation. And when I say gut level, I mean the kind of understanding that actually changes your behavior. Here's the simple truth about inflation. The dollar you have in your pocket today will buy less stuff tomorrow than it does today, not because the dollar changed, but because prices go up over time. The Federal Reserve actually targets a 2% inflation rate annually. This means that every year, without doing anything at all, your purchasing power is quietly shrinking. Now, 2% might not sound like a lot, but let me show you the math, because the math is genuinely shocking. Math example. Imagine you have $10,000 sitting in a savings account earning 0.5% interest, which is pretty typical for a basic savings account right now. After 10 years, with 2% annual inflation, your $10,000 would only have the purchasing power of roughly $8,600 in today's dollars. You didn't lose any money in the account, but you lost $1,400 in purchasing power by doing nothing. That's the invisible cost of financial inaction. And here's the thing, most people don't realize this is happening because no one sends you a bill, no one shows up and takes money out of your account. It just quietly erodes like rust on a car that you keep in the garage and never look at. This is why financial advisors keep telling you to invest. It is not because investing is some magical money-making machine. It's because inflation is a financial gravity that pulls everything downward, and investing is the only way to push back against it hard enough. Now, here's where we get into something really fascinating, the behavioral economics side of things. Because here's the truth. We don't make economic decisions with pure cold logic. We make them with our emotions, our biases, and our deeply ingrained psychological patterns. And the more you understand this, the better financial decisions you make. Let me give you a classic example. Have you ever noticed that you work harder to avoid losing $100 than you work to earn an extra $100? That is not a personality flaw. That is a documented psychological phenomenon called loss aversion, first described by Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman. Research shows that the pain of losing money is psychologically about twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining the same amount. This is why people hold on to losing stocks for too long, hoping they'll recover. This is why people don't want to sell a house for less than they paid, even when the market has moved on. Loss aversion is powerful, real, and it costs people enormous amounts of money every single year. Pause and reflect. Think about a financial decision you made recently that was driven more by fear of loss than by rational analysis. Maybe you kept money in cash instead of investing because you were afraid of market volatility. That is loss aversion in action. All right, let's zoom out for a minute and look at the bigger picture, because the financial decisions you make every day don't happen in a vacuum. They happen within an economic system, and understanding that system helps you understand why the rules of the game are the way they are. There are three major types of economic systems in the world. The first is a command economy. In a command economy, the government makes most of the major economic decisions. They decide what gets produced, at what price, and in what quantities. Historical examples include the Soviet Union and modern-day North Korea. The second type is a market economy, or capitalism. In a pure market economy, prices and production are determined by supply and demand with minimal government interference. The United States is often cited as an example, though in reality, no pure market economy actually exists. The third type is a mixed economy, and this is where pretty much every real-world country actually sits. A mixed economy combines elements of both. The government provides certain goods and services, roads, schools, military, some healthcare, while the private sector handles the rest. The United States, for example, is absolutely a mixed economy. The government spends about $6.1 trillion per year and employs roughly 3 million civilians. That is not a free market. That is a massive actor in the economy. Key insight. Understanding that you live in a mixed economy explains a lot. It explains why taxes exist. It explains why there are regulations on what businesses can and cannot do. It explains why the government intervenes during financial crises, like the 2008 bank bailouts or the COVID-19 stimulus payments. These are all features of a mixed economy, not bugs. Here's one of the most powerful ideas in all of economics, and it's one that you can apply to your own life starting today. Everything in economics is driven by incentives. An incentive is simply something that motivates a particular behavior. Higher wages are an incentive to work more. Lower prices are an incentive to buy more. Tax deductions are an incentive to do things the government wants you to do, like invest in retirement accounts or buy energy-efficient appliances. When economists want to understand why people behave the way they do, they always ask the same question: what are the incentives? And when they want to change behavior, they change the incentives. Here's a fascinating real-world example. In the 1990s, the city of Chicago started charging parents a fee for being late picking up their kids from daycare. You'd think that would reduce tardiness, right? Wrong. Tardiness actually increased dramatically. Why? Because before the fine, parents felt a moral obligation not to be late. After the fine, they just treated it as a fee for extra childcare. The incentive structure completely changed the psychology of the situation. And the same thing happens in your personal finances all the time. Most people think about what they can afford. Sophisticated financial thinkers ask, what does the system incentivize? And then they use those incentives to their advantage. Practical example. The U.S. tax code is absolutely loaded with economic incentives. Contributing to a 401k gives you a tax deduction today and tax-deferred growth for decades. Owning a home gives you a mortgage interest deduction. Starting a business gives you access to a wide range of deductible expenses. These are incentives. The government is literally paying you to do these things through the tax code. Are you taking advantage of them?
Let's talk about gross domestic product, or GDP, for a moment. This is the number you hear most often when people talk about how the economy is doing. GDP is simply the total value of all goods and services produced in a country over a specific period of time. In 2023, the United States had a GDP of approximately $27.4 trillion. That is an almost incomprehensible number. But here's the thing. GDP tells you how much economic activity is happening, but it doesn't tell you whether that activity is making people better off. It doesn't measure inequality. It doesn't measure happiness or well-being. GDP goes up when people buy things, including things that result from disasters. After a hurricane, GDP can actually increase because of all the rebuilding activity. That seems deeply counterintuitive because a hurricane is obviously bad for people, but it's good for GDP because it generates economic activity. This is one of the great limitations of GDP as a measure of economic health. The reason I'm telling you this is because the same thing applies in your personal finances. Your income is not the same thing as your financial health. Someone earning $200,000 a year but spending $210,000 is in worse financial shape than someone earning $60,000 and saving $15,000 of it. The number that matters is not what you earn, it's what you keep and how efficiently you put that money to work. Albert Einstein supposedly called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world, saying that those who understand it earn it, and those who don't pay it. Whether he actually said that or not is debated, but the underlying truth is absolutely undeniable. Let me show you exactly why compound interest is such a powerful economic force. Math example, the power of starting early. Imagine two people, Sarah and Mike. Sarah starts investing $300 per month at age 25 and stops completely at age 35, just 10 years of contributions totaling $36,000. Mike waits until age 35 and invests $300 per month for 30 years straight, a total of $108,000 in contributions. Both earn an average annual return of 7%, which is roughly the historical average of the U.S. stock market adjusted for inflation. At age 65, Sarah has approximately $567,000. Mike has approximately $340,000. Sarah contributed 1/3 of what Mike did and ended up with significantly more money. The difference is time in the market. This is not magic, this is math, and it is the most important financial math you will ever learn. Every year you delay investing is a year of compound growth you can never get back. Now, let's flip the script, because compound interest doesn't just work for you, it also works against you, and when it works against you, it can be absolutely devastating. The average American household carries approximately $6,000 in credit card debt. The average credit card interest rate in 2024 is hovering around 22% annually. Let me show you what that actually means in dollar terms. Math example. If you carry a $6,000 balance on a credit card at 22% interest and you only make the minimum payment each month, which is typically around 2% of the balance or $120, it will take you approximately 33 years to pay off that balance, and you will pay back roughly $14,000 in interest alone. You borrowed $6,000 and paid back $20,000. That is the compound interest equation working against you. Now here's the flip side of that math. If you took that same $120 per month and invested it instead, starting from zero, earning 7% annually, after 33 years, you'd have approximately $170,000. The difference between those two outcomes is not income level, it's not luck. It's one single decision about what to do with $120 every month. That is the economics of debt, laid completely bare. Here's something most financial content doesn't talk about enough: the psychological economy happening inside your own head, and it matters enormously for your financial outcomes. Research by economist Sendhil Mullainathan and psychologist Eldar Shafir, published in their book Scarcity, showed that when people feel poor, when they feel like they don't have enough, their cognitive bandwidth actually decreases. Their IQ scores drop, their decision-making becomes more short-term focused, and they are more likely to make financial decisions that keep them poor. This is not a character flaw. This is a cognitive consequence of scarcity, and it explains why financial advice that simply says, just save more or just invest, misses the psychological reality of so many people's lives. The stress of financial scarcity literally impairs the mental capacity needed to make better financial decisions. The most powerful thing you can do, more powerful than any investment strategy, is to give yourself even a small financial cushion. Research shows that having even $500 to $1,000 in emergency savings meaningfully reduces financial stress, improves decision-making, and breaks the scarcity cycle. It is not about the amount, it is about the psychological shift from scarcity to agency. Most people don't realize this. According to the Federal Reserve's most recent survey of consumer finances, 37% of American adults could not cover an unexpected $400 expense without borrowing money or selling something. Nearly 4 in 10 Americans are living inside the scarcity trap right now. If that's you, you are not alone, and there is a specific, practical way out. All right, we've covered an enormous amount of ground today, so let me give you 3 concrete tools, 3 ways of thinking that will make you a better economic decision maker starting right now. Tool number 1, always calculate opportunity cost. Before any significant financial decision, ask yourself, what am I giving up by choosing this? It's not just about the money you're spending, it's about the money's best alternative use. The $10,000 you spend on a luxury vacation is also $10,000 that could have been earning compound returns in an investment account. That doesn't mean you shouldn't take the vacation. It means you should make that choice consciously and deliberately, not by default. Tool number 2, ask what the incentives are here. Before making any major financial decision, ask, what is the system incentivizing here? What does the tax laws reward? What does my employer's benefits package make advantageous? What is this financial product actually designed to do, for me or for the institution selling it? Following incentives often leads you to better financial decisions faster than any other analytical framework. Tool number 3, think in probabilities, not certainties. One of the most dangerous things in personal finance is acting as if you know what the future holds. The economy is complex. Markets are unpredictable. Life throws unexpected expenses at all of us. Thinking probabilistically means building financial resilience, diversifying, maintaining an emergency fund, avoiding over-leveraging, not because you know something bad will happen, but because you know that unpredictable things happen and you want to be ready. Here's the absolute minimum baseline financial plan that anyone at any income level can implement. This is not about becoming wealthy overnight. This is about building the foundation that makes wealth possible. Step 1. Build an emergency fund of at least $1,000. Not $10,000, not 3 to 6 months of expenses, just $1,000. That number alone statistically reduces the likelihood of falling into high-interest debt during an emergency. Put it in a high-yield savings account where it earns at least 4 to 5% interest rather than sitting in a standard checking account earning nothing. Step 2. If your employer offers a 401k match, contribute enough to get the full match. A 50% employer match on up to 6% of your salary is a guaranteed 50% return on that portion of your investment. There is no other investment in the world that gives you a guaranteed 50% return from day one. Leaving that on the table is the single most expensive financial mistake most working Americans make. Step 3. Automate everything you possibly can. Set up automatic transfers to your savings. Set up automatic investment contributions. Set up automatic bill payments. The research on behavioral economics is crystal clear. We are terrible at consistently doing the right financial thing when it requires willpower. Automation removes willpower from the equation entirely. So here's where we land. Economics is not a subject reserved for academics or Wall Street analysts. It is the language of human decision-making. Every choice you make about how to spend your time, your money, and your energy is an economic decision. And here's what I most want you to take away from everything we've covered today. You are already an economist. You have always been an economist. You just haven't had the vocabulary and the framework to see it clearly. But now, you do. The gap between people who build wealth and people who don't is rarely about intelligence or income level. It is about awareness. It is about understanding the economic forces at work in your own life. Inflation eroding your savings, compound interest either working for or against you, incentive structures either rewarding you or costing you, and making conscious, deliberate choices instead of the drifting along by default. Here is your one action step from today. Just one. Look at your bank accounts right now and answer this question. Is my money sitting in an account earning less than the current inflation rate? If it is, you are losing purchasing power every single day. Open a high-yield savings account today. You can do it in 15 minutes online and move your emergency fund there. One action, 15 minutes, a genuinely meaningful financial impact that compounds over time. Economics doesn't have to be intimidating. Finance doesn't have to be confusing. The concepts are human, the tools are learnable, and the results, when you apply them consistently, are life-changing. Now you know what economics actually is. The question is, what are you going to do with that knowledge? Because in the end, that decision is the most economic thing of all. If this video gave you even one thing to think about, hit that like button and subscribe for more content that makes the financial world actually make sense. I'll see you in the next one.